July the 14th,
Oh, yeah.
we're going to have a lesson on the Antichrist.
Looking forward to it.
July the 21st, the next week, it's a sing-along, your old-time favorite hymns, Volume 1.
Looking forward to it, too.
28th, the next week, a new heaven, a new earth, and a new Jerusalem. You'll love it. And then the fourth Sunday is Volume 2 of our sing-along of the old hymns. These are the 4 Sundays. Here they are, and later on I will send this out to you in an email so you won't forget, because you don't want to miss these. See the connection? The doctor is that little boy. I love that face. Short on me, but usually get the picture. The last part is supposed to say that paid in full 30 years before. So comes around.
What goes around comes around.
Thank you. I was trying to say that, but it wouldn't come out right. Okay, we've got 6 chapters to cover, and I know some of this can get boring because there's a lot of history. Now, we loved it the other day when we was reading about David and naked Bathsheba. Everybody was paying attention. Now it's starting to get kind of dull through here, but I've recapped some of these pretty fast. But in the whole study of 1st and 2nd Samuel, I wish you would take 2 things out of it. One we've talked about already, and one we're going to talk about. One is choices. David had a lot of choices to make, and he'd make the wrong choice, the wrong choice, the wrong choice, the wrong, and he just kept going. We have choices to make, and you need to make sure that God's with you on your choices, and we've covered that. Today, we're going to get to a point where we're going to talk about seeking advice from others. So when we get to that point, at least I'll have something for you to take home other than just a history lesson. Now last week, as David gazed upon the naked Bathsheba, he lusted for her, and then he made many bad choices. What were some of his bad choices from last week?
One, he didn't go out and to the battle with.
That was the number one. He didn't go to war. He sent Joab, his commander, out to the war, and usually the king goes too. He didn't go with him. So he should have been home in the first place. What was his second one? Another. It doesn't have to be in order. What?
He didn't need to be watching her baby.
He didn't need to be watching. He could have turned away. And now all the guys in the room are thinking, yeah, right. But he could have. Yeah, he really could. He chose to let that look turn into lust and then a bad choice, because what did he do next?
He brought Bathsheba.
Huh?
Had her come to
Yeah,
house.
he sent somebody to bring her to his house. Yeah. And then we knew what happened there. Yeah. What did it cost David for these bad choices?
His son, for one thing.
His son that came from the Bathsheba and him for that night, he was killed. God told him. God told the prophet Nathan, and Nathan told him, your son's going to die because of what you and Bathsheba did. And he did. So God will forgive you of your sins if you ask him. So it's not held against you when you go to heaven, nothing. But it doesn't eliminate being punished while you're here on earth. We deserve our punishment for our sins. So just because God forgives you doesn't mean he takes away the punishment that you and I deserve when we make bad choices.
One of those bad choices we missed was very bad. He had Uriah killed.
He did, yeah. He did. He tried 2 different times to get him to go sleep with Bathsheba so he could blame it on her, and then finally the third time he said, well, this is not working. Yeah.
Right.
Put her up on the front line, Joab, where they can, and get her up close to the wall. Now they'll fall back so he'll die. And he did. Yep. Murder. Chapter 15 is, remember, I call it Absalom's conspiracy. Remember, Absalom is David's 3rd son. In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses and with 50 men to run ahead of him. He would get up early and he would stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. Whenever anybody came with a complaint to be placed before the king for a decision, Absalom would call out to him and say, what town are you from? And he would answer, your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel. Then Absalom would say to him, look, your claims are valid and proper. There's no representative of the king to hear you. A big lie. But, he says, and Absalom would add, if only I were appointed judge in the land, then everyone who has a complaint or a case would come to me, and I would see that they receive justice. You see the picture? You can see that Absalom, he's trying to get on the good side of all the people in Israel and then turn them away from King David so he could become the king of Israel. Read a little bit more. Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down to him, Absalom would reach out for his hand, hold him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way towards all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and so he stole the hearts of the people of Israel. His plot was working. You can see what he's doing. I believe this is a picture of the Antichrist to come. The Antichrist will become very popular and he will win over the people of the world, all of them. But this will only last for 3.5 years, and then his demonic side will begin to show. We'll get into that study in a few weeks. A recap of the rest of chapter 15, Absalom moved to Hebron. We've had that name come up a lot. Remember, that's where we get the name Hebrews from. The Israelites or Jacob, his family, and his sons were living there, and they went to Egypt, and the Egyptians started calling them Hebrews because they were from Hebron. King David heard of this, what was going on at the gate. Instead of allowing Absalom to start a civil war with many Israelites being killed, David and his men fled Jerusalem. He did not want this civil war to happen, so he moved and he took his men and he moved out. In this chapter on 16, David and his people have left Jerusalem, and Absalom and his followers now moved from Hebron. They've moved into Jerusalem. David had left 10 concubines in Jerusalem when he fled the city. Absalom set up a tent on the roof, and he slept with David's concubines to show the people his dominance over David. And Nathan the prophet had told him this was going to happen last Sunday when we read this. In chapter 17, in this chapter, David is running from Absalom, his third son, who is trying to take over David's kingdom. Absalom and his men have now taken over the city of Jerusalem. Absalom has 2 advisors that he often consults with about major issues. So, what's the difference between advisors and prophets? You could probably guess and get right.
Prophets share what God has told them to say. Advisors are just pulling it out of the air, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Anybody else? A prophet's chosen by God, while the advisor is chosen by man. Prophets are chosen by God. Nathan was the prophet at the time of David. But advisors, yeah. Absalom's 2 advisors. Now, I'm going to stumble on these words some. I'm going to show you how it's supposed to be pronounced, and then if I don't pronounce that way, don't laugh at me. Ahithophel. Ahithophel.
Perfect.
I got it? Ahithophel. But later on, when I don't have that little piece up there, I'm going to forget how to pronounce it. That was Absalom's number 1 advisor. Hushai. That almost sounds like it's Oriental. Hushai. I know. Absalom's 2nd advisor. Hushai.
Number 1 and number 2.
Absalom's 2nd advisor, Hushai, unknown to Absalom, is what? Still loyal to David. Uh-oh. That's going to be a fly in the ointment. Your mother ever say that word? A fly in the ointment? Anybody ever heard that before?
Yeah.
Okay. With David and his men now on the run, Absalom calls for his number 1 advisor and asks if he should pursue David and his men. So now we're going to go and read what advice he gives. Ahithophel said to Absalom, I would choose 12,000 men, set out tonight in pursuit of David. I would attack him while he is weary and weak. I would strike him with terror, and then all the people with him will flee. I would strike down the king and bring all the people back to you. The death of the man you seek will mean the return of all. All the people will be unharmed. That's the advice given by Ahithophel. What did Absalom think of this advice? Verse 4 said, this plan seemed good to Absalom and to all the elders of Israel. So all of his cabinet members thought it makes sense to us. Go chase him down, kill David, and then bring the men back. But Absalom said, summon Hushai, the Archite, so we can hear what he has to say as well. So now he's calling his number 2 advisor. And when Hushai came to him, Absalom said, Ahithophel has given this advice. Should we do what he says, And if not, give us your opinion. What do you think his opinion gonna be?
Not to do it.
Huh?
Not to do it.
Not so good. Because he's loyal to David, remember? Okay, now it's time to stop and talk about the subject of seeking advice for others. Like I said, I wanted you to be able to take out of this long study in here a couple of things to keep on your mind. We talk about choices, and sometimes you make a choice and later you say, that wasn't the right choice after all. And sometimes before you make choices, you need to get advice from someone. So seeking advice from, I'm not talking about you giving advice to others. I'm talking about you and I seeking advice from somebody else. Make sure you fully understand your own situation or your problem so you can explain it correctly to someone else. Sometimes we get all mixed up and we can't even explain it to somebody, or we explain it incorrectly and then they give us bad advice. So the first thing is to make sure you understand what your problem is in the situation. Be careful who you choose to give advice. Someone you trust, someone who has knowledge of your situation. So be careful. Don't get too far out. They don't know you. They don't know your situation. Could be hard. Listen carefully to the advice being given and make sure you understand what they're saying. And if not, ask questions. Don't think you understand their advice and you go and apply it and then say, well, that's not what I told you. So when you're seeking advice, listen. You can always turn around. So this is what you're telling me. I should do this and this and this. And then, yeah. Or they could say, no, that's not what I'm saying. So ask questions if necessary. Now, do like Absalom did. Pick a second person and ask for advice. Again, someone you think might have maybe a different opinion or have a different look on your situation. Pray for guidance as you consider these two options. Now, and both could be wrong, both could be right, or they could be one right and one wrong. So now you have these two pieces of advice from people you know, people you trust. Be careful. So what do you do with this information? Go to a place where you can quietly consider your options. And sit down where it's quiet in a room by yourself and think about this option one, option two. And remember, they could both be wrong. That'd be right for you. Then make your own decision. You and God. I should have put that on there. You. I thought, you don't know how to time some of these things when you're doing these. Remember, Absalom was crowned king first in Judah only. And then later, the 10 northern tribes called Israel, and they also made him their king. So you're going to see the split now, 10 tribes to the north and 2 tribes to the south, the northern and southern kingdoms. There was much bickering between the 10 northern tribes and the 2 tribes of Judah. However, both finally agreed that David should be reinstated as king over all. Now, we know there's 10 tribes in the north, and what were the 2 tribes in the south?
Judah.
Judah was one, because they called it Judah. Benjamin. Benjamin, when they settled the promised land, Benjamin didn't go do what he was told, and he kind of huddled up and lived part of Judah's land. So Benjamin's a very small tribe, and it's right next to Judah. I think he did that. He was afraid to go out in battle, and he knew that Judah was strong, so he took his part of the land right there. However, both groups finally decided, the 10 and the 2 tribes, that David should be king of all Israel. Now we're seeing the formation of this split of the kingdom. The 10 tribes in the north, we called Israel. 2's in the south, called Judah. For now, David is king of both. We use that study a lot about the northern and southern kingdom. And in 722 BC, the Assyrians came in and they raided the northern kingdom, the 10 tribes, and they scattered them, and they took some, and they took captivity, and they took some Gentiles, and they brought them in and planted them in their capital city of the northern over there. So when they dispersed, they shipped a bunch of these people or hauled them off to different countries. Have you ever heard the term the lost tribes of Israel? It's those 10 tribes got scattered. Many ran on their own. Well, how long does it take for the Assyrians to come over to the northern kingdom and conquer such a big piece of land? Well, they go in to Samaria, the town that was the capital of the 10 tribes. So they go into the capital. That's what you do in battle. And you secure the capital. They hauled off a whole bunch of the Jewish people there and Israelites and took them back in captivity. Then they gathered all these other Gentiles and they put them in Samaria. Now, the Jews and the Samaritans began to marry each other. And so it grew more than just a town. It became a territory called Samaria. And all of the Jews hated the people in Samaria. So we had a northern and southern kingdom, but it got all scattered. 10 tribes are scattered. The Samaritans, half Jews and half Gentiles. Even when the Jews that were up around in the north around Galilee in the time of Jesus, when they come south to go to Jerusalem, they would cross over the Jordan River, go down the side, and come back because they would not cross in through the land of Samaria. But when Jesus was heading to Jerusalem, he said no, and he went through Samaria. Remember, he had that confrontation with the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman. So you see some of this how it's divided. Well, so we know that the northern kingdom gets wiped out 722 BC. And then later in the southern kingdom, which is Judah, I can't remember the name of the king now, but whoever was king of Judah, the southern kingdom at that time, there was an envoy of some people from Babylon came over to, I think it was the king's birthday or celebration. And while they were there, the king stupidly said, "Let me show you all our treasures." And he showed them all the treasures, the temple, all the gold in there stuff and everything. And so the envoy went back to the Babylonians and said, "Ooh, we can take them." And they did. In 586 BC, they destroyed it and destroyed the temple and took everything off. But there's no record that they took the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
So the Ark of the Covenant, nobody knows where it is. Well, somebody does maybe, but not many people. Maybe a handful of Jews know. They figure it must be hid somewhere. That's where you get this movie, The Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, it's a lost, it's still, but I think they know where it is, some of the Jews right now. So this was the beginning of this breakup between the north and south. Now, later we're going to be reading about Solomon. And Solomon, well, maybe I better save that before the lesson comes out. Solomon. Chapter 20. Do you remember that Absalom went up to the roof and he slept with David's 10 concubines? Y'all remember that?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't think you'd forget. Do you wonder what happened to these 10 women when David returned to Jerusalem?
No. I know.
One person knows. When David returned to his palace in Jerusalem, he took the 10 concubines he had left to take care of the palace, and he put them in a house under guard. He provided for them, but had no sexual relations with them. They were kept in confinement till the day of their death, living as widows. Here's the question. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? That's opinion. I'm not even sure. What do you think? Somebody tell me why you think it's a good thing or a bad thing.
It's a good thing because humanitarian.
I think, yeah, that's a point. I mean, he could come back and say, killed him.
Yeah, at least you let them live.
Huh?
You let them live.
Yeah, you let him live.
Well, he did the same thing to Bathsheba, so why didn't he just let them live their regular lives?
Yeah.
You
So
know?
there's, why did they have to live in confinement?
Yeah, why didn't
Yeah.
he do
So
the same
there-
thing to himself?
You can see a good side and a bad side, and we really don't know David's intentions. Was because I don't want to see you, you're going to live there and you stay in confinement, I don't want to see you. Or was he saying, I'm going to take care of you, go live over there, because the whole town knows what happened, I'll provide for you. It's a kind of a 50-50 deal in there. And sometimes you read scriptures and you don't know the answer to some of the things. So you kind of form your own opinion, but it is that, it's an opinion. But could have been a good thing, could have been a bad thing.
How old was David when all this was going on?
I don't know. I don't know that it gave any ages back then much at all. Not in the scriptures anyway. I said earlier that both the northern and the southern kingdoms agreed that David should be king over all. However, it didn't last long as one Israelite turned against David. In chapter 20 it says, now a troublemaker named Sheba of Bikrah, a Benjaminite, happened to be there. He sounded the trumpet and shouted, we have no share in David, no part in Jesse's son. Every man to his tent, Israel. So all the men of Israel deserted David. One guy caused all that? So all the men deserted David to follow Sheba, son of Bikrah. But the men of Judah stayed by their king all the way from the Jordan to Jerusalem. David said, take your master's men and pursue him, or he will find fortified cities and escape from us. In other words, get him before he reaches fortified cities. So Joab's men and the Kerethites and the Pelethites and all the mighty warriors went out under the command of Abishai. They marched out from Jerusalem to pursue Sheba. Sheba and his men fled into a major city where they thought it was well fortified. When Joab and his men arrived, they started building ramps up to the outer wall while some of his men were battering the walls. Something really weird happened. Let's read about it. While they were battering the walls to bring it down, a wise woman, says wise woman, called from the city, listen, tell Joab to come here so I can speak to him. Joab went to her and she asked, are you Joab? I am, he answered. She said, listen to what your servant has to say. We are the peaceful and faithful in Israel. Why are you trying to destroy a city that is a mother to Israel? Why do you want to swallow up the Lord's inheritance? And then Joab, he says, far be it from me. Far be it from me to swallow up a city or destroy it. This is not the case. A man named Sheba from the hill country of Ephraim has lifted up his hand against the king, against David. Hand over this one man and I'll withdraw from the city. The woman said to Joab, his head will be thrown to you from the wall. Then the woman went to all the people with her wise advice, and they cut off the head of Sheba and they threw it to Joab. So he sounded the trumpet and his men dispersed from the city, each returning home, and Joab went back to the king in Jerusalem. I had worse pictures I could have shown. I had worse pictures of Bathsheba that I could have shown last time. But I spared you. At times we all need advice. First pray about it, then seek out trustworthy people. Consider their advice. Pray to the Father that He will lead you in your choices. Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. Okay, end of lesson, but I have a song, and I was kind of going fast. Steve gave me 2 different songs, so I took the first one. I had it scheduled for today. And then when he gave me the second one, oh no, whoop! I swapped them, and he said, that's fine. Because I thought he picked a very good song.